don't.
You know what? Be serious here. This is like incredibly controversial. I mean, so much so that Senator McConnell called it out as completely inappropriate. Everybody knew about it. This guy posed as a marshal. You're saying you don't know about that, even though it was widely reported. He murdered somebody, right?
You're asking me about facts that I just don't know about. I don't recall that from the. You might be right,
Okay.
Senator. I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about. I generally know that an individual with that name received a pardon, but I don't know the facts and circumstances of any of.
Seriously?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to America First. Today we're diving deep into another example of political theater that perfectly illustrates what's wrong with our broken system. Before we get started, I need you to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell because YouTube keeps shadow banning conservative voices like ours. And if you want to support real patriotic content and help us keep fighting the good fight, head over to patreon.com/AmericaFirst where you can support us for as low as $5 a month. Every dollar helps us continue exposing the truth that the mainstream media won't tell you. Today we're reacting to Senate testimony that shows exactly why Americans have lost faith in our institutions. We've got Senator Peter Welch from Vermont, a Democrat, grilling Stephen Chad Meredith, who's been nominated for a federal judgeship. Now, folks, I want you to pay close attention to what's happening here because this is a masterclass in political grandstanding and the weaponization of our confirmation process.
Senator Welch.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think it is. Mr. Meredith, I want to ask you about these pardons, and I know you've been asked about it, but my understanding is that Mr. Baker, he posed as a U.S. Marshal. Is that correct?
Senator, I don't know. As I told Senator Durbin, I did not review any pardon file for Mr. Baker and did not advise the governor on that. So I'm not aware of the facts and circumstances.
Seriously?
Senator, I've read about it in the media.
So you're aware?
Well, I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about. I generally know that an individual with that name received a pardon, but I don't know the facts and circumstances of any of.
I'm asking you whether you know that he posed as a marshal.
I do not know that, Senator. I don't know that. I know that he was convicted. Well, my understanding is that he was originally convicted of a murder, I believe, but I don't know the facts and circumstances, Senator.
I mean, this was widely reported in Kentucky. It was very controversial.
Well, Senator, I think this was in the news maybe roughly 5 years ago, and all the details that were reported escaped me.
Senator McConnell said that this was completely inappropriate. Are you aware of that, to pardon him?
Senator, I recall that many elected officials made comments about that. I don't remember specifics.
You know what? You're a lawyer.
Yes, sir.
And you understand specificity matters, right? I'm not asking you what you knew from personal experience. I'm asking you what everybody in Kentucky knew. This guy posed as a marshal. That was widely reported, right?
Senator, again, you're asking me about facts that I just don't know about. I don't recall that from the. You might be right, Senator. I don't.
You know what? Be serious here. This is like incredibly controversial. I mean, so much so that Senator McConnell called it out as completely inappropriate. Everybody knew about it. This guy posed as a marshal. You're saying you don't know about that, even though it was widely reported. He murdered somebody, right?
My understanding, Senator, is that he was convicted of a murder.
And he killed the man's wife. He held this person he killed, he held his wife, that man's wife and his kids at gunpoint, right?
Senator, I don't know. You're asking me about specific facts and circumstances.
In 2017, a state jury found him guilty.
Senator, I understand that it's my understanding that he was convicted, but you're asking me about facts and circumstances that I'm not aware of.
All right, I'll pretend you're telling me the truth, and I'll enlighten you as to what happened. In 2017, a state jury found him guilty. He got a 19-year prison sentence, right?
Senator, again, I don't know
All right,
all the
just
facts
take
and
it from me. We'll
circumstances
just
of that.
assume I'm telling the truth. And he got a 19-year sentence. In 2018, Baker's brother, that's the man who was pardoned, hosted a fundraiser at his home for the governor, Matt Bevin. You work for him, right?
I was in the counsel's office in Governor Bevin's office.
All right, so when I asked the question, did you work for him?
Yes.
Is the answer yes?
Well, I worked for him in the governor's office while he was governor.
So you work for him.
Correct.
And his brother hosted a fundraiser, and Governor Bevin got $21,500, right?
I don't know. I have seen in the media.
All right, I'll let you know that's what happened.
Okay.
And in Governor Bevin's final days in 2019, he pardoned Mr. Baker.
I
And-
have seen media reports to that effect.
Right. And he had served 2.5 years of his 19-year sentence. So let me just ask you this. Do you agree with that pardon?
Senator, I did not review any pardon file for Mr. Baker. I didn't advise the governor on that. That's a discretionary function belonging to an executive branch
we all know
official.
that. The governor can do what he wants. President Trump can do what he wants with the pardon power. I'm just asking you, do you agree with it? The guy shot somebody in front of his wife and kids. He got a 19-year sentence. He served 2.5 years. His brother gave a $21,500 contribution to the governor, and lo and behold, he got a pardon. Do you agree with that?
Senator, I'm not aware of all the
All
facts
right.
and circumstances.
While you were
And-
the governor's counsel, there was a subpoena to get the records so that people could understand what the deal was on why this murderer got a pardon. And you resisted the subpoena, right?
Well, no, Senator. So what happened was, several of us. No, I did not. I told the governor's office I'd be happy to respond to that. As
Well,
soon as
the records went missing, as I understand it.
that's not true to my knowledge, Senator.
Well, where are they?
Well, my understanding is that the governor's administration currently has them.
And they resisted the subpoena while you were working as counsel for the governor.
No, I don't believe that's true, Senator.
But I see my time is up and my answers are not complete, but I can ask some follow-up questions. Thank you.
Senator
Let me set the stage for you. This entire line of questioning revolves around pardons issued by former Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin back in 2019. Now, Governor Bevin was a Republican, and like any governor, he had the constitutional authority to issue pardons. But apparently, Senator Welch and the Democrats think they can retroactively litigate every executive decision ever made by a Republican governor. What we're witnessing here is Stephen Chad Meredith, a qualified judicial nominee, being subjected to what can only be described as a political hit job. Senator Welch is grilling this man about pardons that he clearly states he had no involvement in reviewing or advising on. Think about that for a moment, patriots. This nominee is being held responsible for decisions he didn't make, cases he didn't review, and recommendations he didn't provide. But let's talk about what's really going on here. The Democrats are using this confirmation hearing as a platform to attack Governor Bevin, a Republican who had the audacity to exercise his constitutional prerogatives as governor. They're trying to create guilt by association, suggesting that because Meredith worked in a governor's office, he must somehow be complicit in every decision made during that administration. This is exactly the kind of corrupt tactics we've seen from the left for years now. They can't attack Meredith's qualifications, they can't attack his legal expertise, so instead they resort to political theater and gotcha questions about cases he had nothing to do with. It's the same playbook they used against Brett Kavanaugh, against Amy Coney Barrett, and against every conservative nominee who threatens their radical agenda. Now let's examine the facts that Senator Welch is so desperately trying to weaponize. He's talking about a man named Baker who was convicted of murder and later pardoned by Governor Bevin. The senator keeps insisting that this was widely known, that everyone in Kentucky knew about it, that it was controversial. But here's what he's not telling you, folks. The pardon power exists for a reason. It's a constitutional check on our justice system, designed to provide mercy when circumstances warrant it. Every president, every governor has this authority, and they use it based on information and circumstances that the public often doesn't have access to. But the Democrats want you to believe that every pardon issued by a Republican is automatically corrupt, while every pardon issued by a Democrat is an act of compassion and justice. Senator Welch keeps hammering on the fact that Baker's brother hosted a fundraiser for Governor Bevin and donated money to his campaign. So what? Political fundraising is legal in this country. Donors have the right to support candidates they believe in. Unless there's direct evidence of a quid pro quo arrangement, which the senator doesn't provide, this is nothing more than political innuendo designed to smear both Governor Bevin and nominee Meredith. But notice how Meredith handles himself throughout this interrogation. He remains calm, professional, and honest. When he doesn't know something, he says he doesn't know. When he wasn't involved in something, he clearly states that fact. This is exactly the kind of judicial temperament we want on our federal bench. Compare that to the grandstanding and theatrical outrage we're seeing from Senator Welch. The senator keeps saying things like, "I'll pretend you're telling me the truth," and "we'll just assume I'm telling the truth." This is incredibly disrespectful to a judicial nominee who's under oath before the United States Senate. It shows the complete lack of decorum and respect that has infected our political process thanks to the radical left's scorched earth tactics. What's particularly galling is how Senator Welch tries to make Meredith responsible for administrative decisions about document retention and subpoena responses. The nominee clearly states that he was willing to respond to any legitimate requests for information, but the senator continues to badger him about decisions that were made by others in the administration. This is classic Democrat strategy, folks. They take complex administrative and legal processes and try to boil them down to sound bites that make Republicans look bad. They ignore the actual facts, ignore the legal complexities, and ignore the constitutional principles at stake because all they care about is scoring political points. Let's talk about what this really represents. This is an attack on federalism and the separation of powers. The Democrats want to centralize all power in Washington and eliminate any independence at the state level. They can't stand the fact that Republican governors might make decisions they disagree with, so they try to use the federal confirmation process to relitigate state-level decisions. Governor Bevin had every right to issue those pardons. He had access to information that the public didn't have. He had the constitutional authority to exercise mercy and clemency as he saw fit. That's how our system is supposed to work. But the Democrats want to eliminate that discretion and turn every governor into a rubber stamp for their radical agenda. And let's be honest about what's happening to judicial nominations in this country. The Democrats have turned the confirmation process into a political circus. They're not interested in qualifications, experience, or judicial philosophy. They only care about whether nominees will advance their progressive agenda from the bench. Stephen Chad Meredith appears to be exactly the kind of nominee we need on our federal courts. He's experienced, he's knowledgeable about the law, and he has the temperament to handle difficult situations with grace and professionalism. But none of that matters to Senator Welch and his Democratic colleagues because Meredith worked for a Republican governor. This is why we need to take back the Senate, patriots. This is why we need to elect Republicans who will stand up to these tactics and confirm qualified conservative judges. The Democrats have shown us exactly what they'll do when they have power. They'll weaponize every institution, politicize every process, and attack anyone who doesn't bow down to their radical ideology. What we're seeing in this hearing is a microcosm of everything that's wrong with Washington. Career politicians like Senator Welch, who's been in Congress for over 15 years, using their positions to grandstand and attack good people who want to serve their country. They're more interested in creating viral moments and fundraising off outrage than they are in actually governing or confirming qualified nominees. And let's not forget the broader context here. While Democrats are wasting time with these political theater hearings, real Americans are struggling with inflation, crime, and an economy that's been destroyed by their failed policies. But instead of focusing on solutions, they'd rather play gotcha games with judicial nominees. The hypocrisy is astounding when you consider the pardons issued by Democratic presidents and governors over the years. President Clinton pardoned Mark Rich, a fugitive billionaire who fled the country to avoid prosecution. President Obama commuted the sentences of hundreds of drug dealers and other criminals. But somehow those were acts of compassion, while Republican pardons are automatically corrupt. This double standard is exactly why Americans have lost faith in our institutions. The rules only apply to Republicans. The scrutiny only goes one way. The media will spend weeks analyzing every pardon issued by a Republican governor while completely ignoring the controversial clemency decisions made by Democrats. But here's what gives me hope, patriots. Nominees like Stephen Chad Meredith show us that there are still good people willing to serve despite the toxic political environment created by the radical left. They're willing to endure these character assassinations and political hit jobs because they believe in the rule of law and constitutional principles. We need more people like Meredith on our federal bench. Judges who understand that their job is to interpret the law, not make policy from the bench. Judges who respect the Constitution and the separation of powers. Judges who won't be intimidated by Democratic senators or activist groups. The questioning we saw from Senator Welch is exactly why judicial nominees need to be prepared for anything. They need to understand that Democrats will use any excuse, any connection, any association to try to derail their nominations. They'll dig up decades-old controversies, manufacture scandals out of thin air, and demand that nominees defend decisions they had nothing to do with. But what's most disturbing about this hearing is how it represents a fundamental misunderstanding of how our government is supposed to work. Senator Welch seems to think that everyone who worked in Governor Bevin's administration should be held personally responsible for every decision made during that time. That's not how executive branches function, and it's not how legal counsel operates. Legal counsel provides advice when asked, reviews matters when assigned, and offers professional opinions based on law and precedent. They don't make policy decisions, they don't decide who gets pardoned, and they certainly don't control every aspect of an administration's operations. But Democrats want to blur these lines because it helps their political narrative. This is part of a broader pattern we've seen from the left. They want to eliminate the independence of legal counsel, turn lawyers into political operatives, and make everyone in an administration responsible for every decision made by that administration. It's a recipe for paralysis and political warfare rather than effective governance. What Stephen Chad Meredith demonstrated in this hearing is exactly what we want to see from our judicial nominees. Honesty about what he knew and didn't know. Clarity about his role and responsibilities. Professional demeanor, even when being attacked by partisan senators. These are the qualities that make for good federal judges. Patriots, this hearing should serve as a wake-up call about what's at stake in our judicial nominations. The Democrats will stop at nothing to prevent qualified conservative judges from taking the bench. They'll use any tactic, make any accusation, and distort any fact to advance their political agenda. That's why your support is so crucial. When you support America First on Patreon at patreon.com/AmericaFirst, you're helping us expose these tactics and fight back against the radical left's assault on our institutions. For just $5 a month, you can be part of the resistance against political theater and partisan attacks on good people. We need to continue shining a light on hearings like this one. We need to call out senators like Peter Welch when they abuse their positions for political gain. And we need to support nominees like Stephen Chad Meredith who are willing to serve despite the toxic political environment. The future of our judiciary depends on our ability to get qualified conservative judges confirmed. These judges will be making decisions that affect our constitutional rights, our freedoms, and our way of life for decades to come. We cannot allow the Democrats to turn the confirmation process into a political weapon designed to intimidate and discourage good people from serving. Remember, patriots, every like, every subscribe, every share helps us reach more Americans with the truth that the mainstream media won't tell them. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest content, and don't forget to support us on Patreon so we can continue fighting for the values that make America great. This has been America First, and I'll see you in the next video. Keep fighting the good fight, patriots. Our country depends on it.